degree. So there's a direct correlation that it hit me like a ton of bricks back in 1996, 97, when we were debating the charter bill. We need to focus more on this. So I fought for and got the education committee. And the union came to me right after I got the committee, and they said, look, you know, we've always liked you. We thought you were a bright young man. And I said, thank you for that. And then they said, but you know, we have a problem with you. And I was taken aback because I didn't know the education establishment politics. I didn't know the union politics. I was really focused on other things. And I said, well, what problem? Well, you voted for the charter school bill, which we don't like that. We don't like the fact you voted for a charter school bill. But since you're now chairman of the education committee, you can make sure they don't get funded. So we're going to watch you and hope you don't fund them. Because, you know, just because you have a bill doesn't mean that you have to fund the bill. And I said, but wait a minute. Now, I had some of these innovative young people come to me with ideas for charter schools. I said, DC Public Schools had talked about a residential facility and a residential school. They've been talking about it for 15 years. These kids from Princeton got on a whiteboard. They have a charter application. I think it looks like a good idea. I said, Bill Marriott and the hotel and restaurant folks came to me with this idea about a hospitality high school. So the kids could graduate and go into the culinary arts, go to train to be chefs in Paris, and then go to college. They could never do that in DC Public Schools. So union, tell me why I should not sign on to some of these things that the traditional system's been talking about doing for years, but they could never do it because of the bureaucracy and the work rules. And they said, we don't want you to fund it. And, you know, I'm the worst person in the world, like Rex Sinfield. I'm the worst person in the world to say, don't do something. I may be second worst, but I am one of the worst. And lo and behold, we funded. We went on a track, Mayor Williams and I, where we ended up funding the most prolific charter movement in the country. We have nearly upwards of 35% of our public school kids in charter schools. And the Washington Post gave us the biggest validation that we've ever had a few months ago when they had on the front page above the fold headline that the charter school test scores in reading and math were over 20 points higher than DC Public Schools. And that's largely because that, you know, our charter schools had made sure, and I was insistent on this, that they weren't charter schools just in name only. They were charter schools in terms of having a rigorous application process, which means that not just anyone could open a school, which is what you see in other states that really don't want charters, but they say if we open up a bad school and they fail, then we can say charters don't work. I've heard district authorizers say that in those stark terms. So we had a rigorous application process. We had a rigorous monitoring process, but we gave them the freedom and autonomy to do their own thing, and we closed down the bad schools. You can't have a legitimate choice program that allows incompetency to flourish. So we shut down some of the bad schools. And then on top of that, so we had several years of this experience that was positive. In 2003, as Rex alluded to, Mayor Williams and I sat down with President Bush and Rod Page, and we put in place the first ever federally funded scholarship or voucher program. And it's on that I really want to spend some time, if you will indulge me. See, this program has worked over the past 6 years. We have testimonials from kids all over the country who were able to go to college that otherwise wouldn't go there. And it's been studied ad nauseum, and the studies show that parent satisfaction is over 85%. There's noticeable, discernible increases in reading of these kids. And on top of that, we have now parents who are involved in their child's education unlike what we've ever had before. So, as soon as the program is up for reauthorization this year and the new administration gets in and my good friend Arnie Duncan becomes Secretary of Education, they issue something saying that they're going to shut down the program so those 1,700 kids will have to find another place to go in the fall. Well, that didn't sit too well with me and several people like me in D.C. And they said, just put them in DC public schools. They said to our new chancellor, Michelle Reed, you know, you need to just be ready to absorb these 1,700 kids. Well, we weren't going to take that lying down. And it was, and from my vantage point, it was real important to show, and this goes to Milton Friedman's point about making sure your fight and your commitment is ongoing and not episodic. Because of the years of success that we've had with alternatives to the traditional government schooling, unbeknownst to us, we had a groundswell of public support for our voucher program because parents see that it works. We've had over 100,000 kids benefit from charter schools. We've had over 10,000 kids benefit from our voucher program. And a poll that was released by the Friedman Foundation this week showed that over 70% of DC residents of all walks of life support the program, and 79% said the program shouldn't end. On top of that, we had a letter from a majority of the DC City Council that was signed by those members supporting our program. It was a landmark situation because my fellow Democrats on Capitol Hill couldn't believe that an urban legislature would sign on to a parental choice voucher program in DC, and they did. And the reason why that's important to note is because if you strip bare all the politics, at the end of the day, we're supposed to be making sure we create an educational environment for children. And if we're not doing that with the one-size-fits-all model, then we should be open to alternative opportunities. And the beauty is in DC now, the public is open to that. And they are accepting of it. And yesterday I was at a press conference where Senator Lieberman, who sponsored our bill for reauthorization, Senator Susan Collins, Voinovich, Feinstein, and former Mayor Williams and I, we spoke at this press conference. And these kids were there, and one parent stood up and said, you know, if it wasn't for this program, I would have lost my child. At the end of the press conference, totally unrehearsed, tears in her eyes. And at the end of the day, as Senator Lieberman said, as the press conference was closing, this is why we support this program. See, because this is the American solution we need in education. We need to make sure that we create environments for our children to learn, irrespective of where those environments exist. And the essence of our democracy is dependent on us doing that. Now, I really believe, and Rex and I have a bet, he's going to pay my half if I lose. That's a little something I didn't tell you. But I really believe we're going to get this bill reauthorized. Because I actually believe that the support locally has surprised some of the leadership on the Hill. But DC is not alone. I've done work with Governor Jindal, several African American legislators in Louisiana. They now have the most robust charter movement in the country, even outstripping us in terms of the number of kids in charter schools. They have over 50% of their public school kids in New Orleans in charter schools. I helped Governor Jindal with his scholarship bill that was just reauthorized. And you talk about demand. See, sometimes those of us who up in this rarefied air, we lose sight of the fact that parents on the ground don't get caught up in the petty politics of the day. They want what's best for their kids. You know, the last year when we passed the scholarship bill in Louisiana, we had 1 week to get the schools signed up to participate. So in 1 week, we got 56 schools to sign up. And we had to have the school sign up before we could have the parent drive. And we had 1 week after that to get the parents signed up. So there was concern because we knew that the schedule was truncated on purpose because they wanted us to fail. But there was concern that we wouldn't be able to get the word out and that people wouldn't show up. On that Saturday morning, when we opened it up for registration in New Orleans,